I think for me personally, in terms of prompting models, I think what's important is to understand what you want to produce. Ultimately, what is the outcome? Define the outcome very clearly for the AI to follow, and then all the intermediate tasks. I think that is really up to you.
Is this a bubble? Teng, is this a big freaking bubble? Are we in way over our heads right now? Welcome back to AI Supercycle, our premier AI show, airing every single week, presented by Near. We cover the ins and outs of decentralized AI, privacy, and the future of this massive technology.
Near is the blockchain for AI and the execution of AI native apps. You can check out Near's latest AI product at near.ai. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Yeah, welcome to Roll Up TV, man. Good to have you.
Yep. Hey, thanks, Andy. Glad to be here. I think this year, 2026, has been just very exciting on the AI front. So many new things are happening. Very excited for the year ahead as well. So yeah.
Definitely, man. I mean, it's been the year of AI. I actually tried to predict on Kalshi that this was going to be AI was going to win the Time Person of the Year award, but I think something just leaked yesterday, and it's not. But we're on AI Supercycle. Welcome to AI Supercycle Teng, presented by Near, the leading AI blockchain. They just released their Near AI chat product as well as their Near Cloud, so you can actually have an LLM that you use and speak to that is not storing your data, using it for training, or giving it to the local jurisdiction of choice to put you behind bars. We're not going to do that today, Teng. We're going to have a fun time. Let's start at the top. Teng, who is Teng Yan? How did you get started in kind of researching and creating content about AI? I'm a big fan, so thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So, before, and not too many people know this, but actually before getting into crypto full time, I actually spent quite a bit of time in the AI space. And that was, of course, pre-Chat GPT. I, co-founded a healthcare AI company back in 2015, and we were doing very traditional machine learning on very unstructured data, which was mostly like clinical notes, doctors' notes. And from there, we sort of built platforms that help pharma companies run some of the studies in a more efficient sort of way. So that was really where I spent a lot of time getting to know what was happening in the AI space. And then went full time into crypto. Worked with Delphi Digital. We're doing a lot of consulting, research in the space. My focus was a lot on the consumer side of things, like consumer applications, gaming, NFTs and stuff. But I would say sometime around 2 years ago, I started to notice that, hey, what was happening in the AI space was really starting to take off. If you use some of these products at the time, it was probably ChatGPT, maybe GPT 3.5 or something like that. And you could see that actually it was able to start to do some very amazing things, like things I never expected that we would be able to do. So that made me realize that, hey, there's something here that's going on. I need to dedicate as much of my time as possible to understand what was actually happening in the space. So that's where I left Delphi, started researching into what was going on. I would say the thing that really brought me into this space was BitTensor. I think it was, as I was looking what people were trying to do with this, it was just so fascinating. And when I started researching about it, started writing about it, I kind of realized that it was kind of difficult to get out of this rabbit hole. And it's been a year and a half. I'm still spending a lot of time looking at what's going on and still learning new things every single day. So that's
really exciting. That's the beautiful thing about AI, is that it's never ending rabbit hole. Exactly. It's just a never ending rabbit hole. And I mean, I've scratched the surface, but man, is there a lot more to uncover. So let's kind of start on a more broad note here with regards to the evolution of the last year or so. Is there a particular sector of the AI category that you feel like has accelerated far faster and far more effectively and efficiently than others this year? Like, has the model improvements this year just been so much better than anything else in AI? Has the ability to have actual like memory in certain LLMs been so much better? Like, is there a specific part of the stack that has really, really improved this year that you can notably point to and be like, this is why your tangible experience has become a lot better this year? Kind of give us the lay of the land as to where the major improvements across the general LMs happened this year.
Yeah. So, I think it is very obvious that, especially if you've been using some of the AI tools, that things have improved a lot, like
Yeah.
over the last year, compared to just about a year ago. And a lot of it has been driven by better and smarter models. Like the recently released like Gemini 3, I think it's kind of like blown a lot of people's minds away in terms of just how fast and how good it is at doing more complex tasks. And I think a lot of it is driven by just a relentless drive of improvement throughout the industry. If you look at what goes into an AI model, right, there are probably three main components. There is the data, there is the compute, and then there's the actual algorithm itself. And all three of these like frontiers are seeing like constant improvements. We're getting better data. People are producing more and more like relevant data, the synthetic data even, to train models around like very certain tasks. We're seeing like bigger and bigger data centers being built out to train these large and larger AI models. And then of course, like all the researchers are also doing looking into how we can improve like the algorithmic efficiency of like training of these models, right? So all in all, like it means that the scaling laws of AI are still pretty much intact, which means like the more data we put in, the more compute we put in, the more efficiency, the more improvements in the algorithm we make, like the smarter and better the models and the LLMs will be. And we've kind of like seen that with some of the latest models that are out there. So I think we're going to continue to see a lot of these like very steady improvements. I'm expecting newer, better models like throughout like 2026. Many of the major labs like OpenAI have really committed to releasing like their new models on a more regular basis. So I think it's just going to be a good time to kind of like see. So I think like things are just like fully fully charged, and that has really driven, I would say, like a lot of interest and growth in particularly the AI agents kind of like space, because like ultimately AI agents are very constrained by what the models that power them can do. And with these new and better models, I think we're going to see them be able to do a lot more tasks and maintain that focus over a longer sort of like time horizon.
Yeah, I love that. I haven't tried to use Google Gemini Pro 3 yet. I'm sure you have. Is it as good as everyone is saying it is?
Yeah, I think it's to me like I've actually always been using like many of the Gemini models. I kind of like split my time between like ChatGPT and the Gemini stuff. I use ChatGPT for like
Yeah.
easy queries, and I use Gemini for slightly
Okay.
more complex stuff. And I think like definitely what we've seen is that the new Gemini 3 models have been able to are much better at following your instructions. Like if you give them a couple of things, you ask it to do a few things in a sequence, it's actually able to follow the sequence pretty well compared to before. So that was very pleasantly surprising.
Haliday is unified crypto payments. Give your users more wherever they are. Go to haliday.xyz to never write a smart contract again.
Looking for yield that stands out? infiniFi gives you just that. Deposit stablecoins and earn far more than the current savings rate. infiniFi is a battle-tested, reliable DeFi platform that is ready to go. Head to infinifi.xyz.
YEET is built for big moments. The most fun you'll ever have with your crypto. Go to yeet.com to yeet into your next game.
Teng, when it comes to actually creating positive outcomes for your sequences of instructions, when prompting a given agent, right? And you mentioned how these agents are going to be much more sturdy and have better memory and have stronger performance next year because of the consistent model improvement. You alluded to OpenAI committing to scaling their models quickly, which obviously means that everyone else is going to try to do the same thing. When it comes to actually prompting models for the best sort of outcome, given a sequence of instructions or a sequence of tasks, how have you found to do it the most effectively, either in specific instances or more broadly? Like, what are some of your, must-do prompting instruction hacks or tactics that the audience has to know about?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. You know, maybe about like say a year back, I think the idea and the rage that was on everyone's mind was around like prompt engineering, right? And the idea was that hey, if you're
Right,
able to prompt
right,
the model well, you're going to get even better answers. I think that
right.
has kind of been proven somewhat wrong in the sense that if you realize that today, like
Mm,
many of the models are able to understand what you're trying to do even without very long specific sort of like instructions. And I think that's kind of like speaks to some of the progress that's been happening in the model development. I think for me personally, in terms of like prompting models, I think what's important is to understand what you want to produce, ultimately what is the outcome, define the outcome very clearly for the AI to follow. And then all the intermediate tasks, I think that is really up to you. Like if you know very well what the model needs to do, you just give it a very specific set of instructions, tell it exactly what it needs to do, and then it will probably be able to do and follow your steps and give you the instructions as you sort of like determine. If you are not an expert in that particular domain for that query, you can give it a fairly general sort of like instruction. For example, hey, find me like a particular like research on this particular sector and topic which you're not particularly familiar with. It will actually go through its own sort of like thinking and reasoning. It will search the different relevant sort of like websites. You don't have to specify exactly where you want the model to be looking at, what kind of like research papers you want it to find. It's kind of able to sort of like curate a lot of that. I think what I find very helpful in terms of like giving me the best sort of like outputs is giving the model the right context. It needs to know like what do you want to use it for. The good thing is that like ChatGPT.
Could you give?
Go ahead.
Sorry, could you just give a quick example of giving a model context versus not giving the model context and the type of like output you could expect by not doing so?
Yeah. So, for example, let me see. Like one of the things I do, I use some of the AI tools. Like for example, I have some of these like Twitter lists of very interesting like accounts that I follow, but there are 200-300 of
Yeah.
them, and then I basically cut the tweets, I paste it in the model, I ask it to sort of like find me the most important tweets that are relevant for me that I need to know, so that I don't need to filter through all the noise and all the random stuff from that. So I give the model a set of examples of like what are the kind of tweets that I think are important and interesting to me. I want you to tell me tweets where the startup has raised at least 5 million in funding, or they are launching a new product,
Mm-hmm.
mainnet is coming up, very important event that they are sort of like running. And then basically with all of that context, then it sort of like is able to sort of like help me rank and surface out the more important things of that I kind of like want and need, right? So
Got
basically,
it.
if I would just pass it the whole bunch of tweets and ask it to just aggregate all of that, it's going to just try and guess what I might want to see. But if I know exactly what I'm looking for, if I just give that additional context to the agent, it's going to be able to give me a much better sort of like output.
Yep. I appreciate that, and I've experienced that quite a bit as well in my usage of these LLMs. So you were kind of building on how context helps a lot in this realm of trying to get better results there before I interrupted, and you were kind of rounding out your entire thought with regards to the best ways to kind of do prompting or prompt engineering, even though it's kind of maybe not as important, or was proven to be not as important as people had thought. So just if you want to kind of close that loop there.
Yeah, I guess I'll just add a couple of comments like on my own sort of like experiences in terms of using these AI models. I think one is that there isn't really any right answer right now. It just comes down to a lot of experimentation. For example, recently I saw a research paper that said that one of the common tricks that people used to use in prompting the models was to say, imagine that you are a world class marketer, or imagine that you are a world class. Basically, you ask the AI model to sort of like role play for you in terms of what you want it to do. The sort of like research showed that actually it didn't actually improve the outcome. For example, if you ask the AI to role play as a physicist, and then you ask it very hard mathematical questions, it would be the same kind of result as if you ask the AI to be like a lawyer and then answer some of these like questions, right? So I think we're just only starting to scratch the surface of understanding what's the best way to prompt these models. So I think it's a lot of experimentation, figuring out what works best for you. I think the other thing I've realized is that the different models actually have quite different personalities. So the same prompt, whether you use it in ChatGPT or Gemini or Grok, you could get quite different answers. So it comes down to understanding which model kind of like works best for which particular situation. For example, I think Grok has, I find Grok the most creative in terms of like coming out of its outputs, but sometimes it feels a little bit too unhinged to use in a more sort of like professional sort of like setting, or answers that I kind of like
That's
need.
so funny. That is so funny. Um, do you often check the results of what you do across multiple LLMs?
I think I would definitely love to do something like that, especially for the queries that are more important. I think basic queries, I think most models, even ChatGPT, is actually doing pretty well, and I trust actually most of the answers
Yep.
that it
Okay.
gets. But for some of the things, some of the tasks that I ask it to do, um, sometimes I use tools like there's something called like AI, which basically allows you to run the
Mm,
same query across like a couple of different models, and you can kind of like see the answers, evaluate these things, and figure out which model sort of like works best. So that's great. I've even seen some systems where you send in a query and then it has like 3 or 4 different models run the same query, and then they have another model
yeah.
that evaluates the answers from each of these models to give you the final best answer from there, which I think is pretty cool. It just takes a bit of time.
Have you tried Near's product?
Not which product specifically on here?
It's so if you go to near.ai on your computer there, you can click in the top right, uh, try it, and then you can click private chat,
Yes.
and then click on it. And basically, it uses DeepSeek, OpenAI, a couple other models, but it's completely encrypted with TEEs and with basically some ZK. And it is, I think, it is the one and only current AI tool that is private today. Like I think it's the only one. And so you get all the benefits of using these models, the same models that you would use on a normal day, but your data is not leaked to whomever it is, and your information literally could not be given to the authorities if they wanted to, because it's encrypted in such a way that is so you get all the capabilities of memory, of model training, data training, etc., without actually sharing your data. So anyway, they're a partner of the show, of the experience, and I just wanted to show it to you. But I guess it brings a question. Are we so obviously you've got this like Orwellian viewpoint of AI from some people, where it's like, we're entering the end game here. What's that book? Is it what's the book? 19 there's a book that people often refer to as a result of AI. And anyway, it's gotten so infiltrated into our lives, where people are so comfortable giving away their personal information, their financial information, their social information, etc. It begs the question of like, who owns AI? Who owns your AI? Do you own your AI? Who is in control of the responses that you're getting? There's a lot of questions that we can kind of like go down the rabbit hole on, but I guess like the broad one here is like, Teng, do you think that we have an AI privacy crisis brewing on our hands? Or are we in a fine spot right now? Is it too late? Where are we at? Like, how problematic is the current state of the public AI platforms that everyone knows, loves, and uses? And how does that kind of relate to privacy and some of the, I guess, blockchain ideals that you, I'm sure, are aware of and have been a part of in the past?
Yeah, you've outlined a very great point in terms of like where crypto and blockchain actually plays a part in sort of like improving AI. I mean, that's really around um, privacy. Today, for sure, like if you're just using like ChatGPT and Gemini, basically, it's collecting all of this information and data from you. The thing is that most
Mhm.
people don't see it, and because the data right now is just being used to train their next version of the model, so it's something that's happening on the back end, so you don't kind of like feel it. But I think like what's going to happen pretty soon, and we're already seeing some of this with the Chat GPT sort of like shopping feature, is that they're going to start to, with all of the data and the queries that you've been putting into the model is going to start to have a very good idea of who you are, what your interests are, what your likes are. And naturally, as
Yeah,
we've seen with every kind of like business model on the internet, we're going to see them start to sell stuff to you, right? Advertising is always been the model that most of the internet has sort of like thrive on. So that is where I think the consumer is going to start to feel a lot about where this privacy starts to become very important, because it becomes very visceral to um, them and their lives out there. So yeah, no, I think anything that can be done to sort of like protect that is great. I think people don't kind of like care too much about privacy mostly right now, because the value
yeah,
that the AI gives to them is far greater than, I guess, like how they value their privacy. So that's kind of
yeah,
where it is. But I think like for many of us, I think it's definitely a concern. I think in this day of age with so many um in a very chaotic kind of like world, I'm starting to feel that privacy is a very important thing, and very cool stuff that Nia has been
yeah.
doing on that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think the whole like legal obligation that OpenAI has to give your information to the authorities, no matter what, is pretty insane. Um, I mean, that's kind of what any company has in the world, or at least in the States.
Yeah,
Um,
I think just onto that as well
if
is
you're
that, we're only going to figure out what happens when this really gets tested, right? Like when a government
right,
actually
that's what
makes
I
that
mean.
request
Yeah.
that comes, then we'll know whether these companies are going to succumb, whether they're going to actually share all of the data.
Oh, they definitely
Um,
will. Oh, they for sure will.
yeah,
100%. You
it's,
don't think they will?
I think I don't know, man. I think some will try to fight a little bit, but maybe it's just for
Yeah.
show. But ultimately, right, if the government says they want it, I think it's really hard, especially if your whole company is in the country.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Cool, man. So let's talk about some of the agents that you've seen excel. Like, is there so look, let's just lay the context here as if you were an LLM. There's all these agents that we hear about. Salesforce has got their commercial for an agent, and everyone's got these agents, and I'm never gonna book a flight again because the agent's gonna do it for me. And like, why would I ever book a flight? I'm way too cool for that. I'm superior. Why am I gonna ever make a reservation for dinner? Because I'm gonna have an agent do it, and they're never gonna make a mistake. They're not gonna book the wrong restaurant in the wrong city because they hallucinated. That would never happen, right? And so we've heard all about this. But to this day, I have no agents that are doing anything for me outside of like prompting back and forth, creating images, videos, or just generally like giving me like basically what I'm getting at is I'm missing the uh here's the instruction. I want to get information. Okay, now I got the information. Now go do this for me. And like that go do this for me task outside of like whatever their capabilities are from like generating an Excel sheet, generating code, generating an image, video, editing a video, or giving me like the right clipping, etc. Like the actual action of going to do something in the real world, if you will, like not within its own capabilities, I haven't really seen. Um, give us an update on the agent landscape. Where are we at? Will 2026 be the year of the agent actually having capabilities, as I mentioned, to go outside of the internal kind of like LLM to human interaction and actually go do something and kind of report back, whether that be on chain, whether that be book a flight, whether that be email a friend. When do we get the actual fulfillment of this promise of agents doing all of our work and these types of things.
So, I think, I guess a couple of thoughts on that is that firstly, we're already seeing like AI agents, be good at certain things. And for example, things like research, like being able to synthesize, digest a huge amount of information and present the things that are important. Agents are getting good at coding. I think that's because code is very clear. We know whether it works or it doesn't work. It's kind of easy to tell what's good and bad. So we're going to see a continual improvement over the next couple of months, 1 to 2 years, of agents being able to do more and more tasks in a better way. I think one of the main hindrance, I think, for AI agents to be able to do stuff, like you mentioned, being able to book the flight for you and do everything in autonomous way, is that there is still a bit of that reliability issue where, let's say, if the AI hallucinates maybe like 1% of the time or maybe 2% of the time, which is really pretty good, which means like 99% of the time it still gets the task done. But then if you chain that over like multiple like different tasks and steps that an AI agent needs to be able to do, it needs to search the different websites, it needs to pull out the information, it needs to go to the booking page, it needs to key in the payment details, right? If you chain all of these together, then it becomes, you can see that over a series of actions, right, the failure rate becomes higher and higher. So I think that has still been the problem. And nobody wants to use a product where you know that you're only going to get the outcome you want, like 50% of the time or 60% of the time. We will get there. Things are going to start to improve faster and quicker. And I think the other thing that also we've lacked a little bit is around the data side of things. For example, if you've tried out some of the newer sort of like browsers that or computer use agents that like OpenAI has kind of like used, you find that it's very interesting. It's able to sort of like understand what's on your screen. It's able to click buttons for you, but it's still pretty bad, right? It kind of like gets stuck. It's very laggy. It doesn't work. And a lot of it is because there isn't that data set out there that shows a human sort of like doing his work and clicking all these different buttons on the screen. That's an entirely new data set that has to be sort of like gathered in order to train the models to do some of these things. So the big research labs are still continuing getting more and more of this data. And I think at some point in time, when there's enough of that data, all of these things will actually start to improve pretty fast.
Trade on anything: economics, weather, sports, crypto, and more. All on Kalshi.com 24/7 for the world's biggest prediction market.
Hibachi is fast and private perps trading, secured by ZK with Celestia underneath. Go to hibachi.xyz to start trading today.
Not your keys, not your coins. From the team that pioneered cold storage, Trezor has just released its new wallet. Guys, if you are still using hot wallets in 2025, 2026, you are missing the entire point. Secure your coins. Get a Trezor at trezor.io. So the agent problem is a data problem, is what you're saying.
It's a
training data problem.
Correct. Yeah, I think data is always
context problem.
Data and context. Right? If you can feed the agent with the right type of data, then I think it's going to be able to do things that you want in a much better way.
So do you anticipate like middle of next year to see this agent booking you a flight idea come to life?
I think we'll probably see something like that. No, I think 2026 will be that year. I kind of like think of 2026 as the year of the AI agents. Like we're going to see some of these use cases really come to life, at least given the pace of progress so far.
Yeah, beautiful. Okay, cool. Kind of a completely different topic, more on the morality and economic side of these AI massive Goliath companies like OpenAI, who's trying to IPO at $1 trillion valuation, Nvidia at 5 trillion or something, or 2 trillion, or maybe it's 2.5 too. Where do we draw the line on for-profit AI companies and for the betterment of society, and how these things kind of come together? We saw this all kind of happen with the internet, and Elon Musk buys Twitter to try to create a place for free speech because he thought all the left wings people were taking it over Twitter. and all these different forms of social media now, Rumble, and all these other different kind of like interesting little pockets of media. It's also going to be happening with AI. Disney has also just announced that they're going to invest $1 billion into OpenAI. So it looks like OpenAI is just taking checks from whatever rich friends that they want to have a part of this pie and integrate their stack into their world. I could see an AI-oriented Disney World sometime soon. Teng, I don't know if you consider yourself, a capitalist, a socialist, a narco-capitalist, a neo-capitalist, a communist. I don't know what you are, but I'm curious, where do you draw the line between profit seeking for AI companies and basically human morals, morality, and not trying to just farm everybody as if they are statistics on a spreadsheet? ChatGPT is talking about introducing data that will allow them to actually advertise to you in the ChatGPT interface. This is how a lot of companies have monetized in the internet. There's a lot of pushback on that. Where are we at? What is your mental model for the state of the for-profit corporations that exist, which own a lot of the AI superpowers?
No, I think that's a great question, and I think it's something that a lot of people are also trying to figure out what's the right balance around some of these things. My general viewpoint is that free markets are good for innovation. I think we've seen that sort of happen, right? And a lot of the great tech innovations, be it like self-driving cars, have come up of startups and sort of like private capital and markets sort of funding a lot of that innovation that's come up. AI, I think everyone can kind of agree that this is probably one of the most important technological developments for humanity as a species, as a race. The thing about AI that makes it a little bit different from some of the previous tech innovations we've had so far is that AI is extremely expensive, right? We need to build a lot of data centers, which requires a huge amount of power, compute, memory, and chips in order to continue to progress. And so that money kind of needs to come from somewhere. And the way that we're going to continue to be able to fund these bigger and bigger training runs and data centers that will produce these better models, it's through both a combination of private investors putting money into a company to fund it, but they put their money. Money never comes without strings attached, right? So there's always expectation of a future profit, future return for the monies out there. So I think that model will continue. I think there's nothing overtly wrong with that. I think what we do need is some form of check and balances to make sure that no one monopolizes this hugely important technology for humanity. The good news is that because the entire world has recognized that this is such an important technology, everyone's eyes are on this. So far, we haven't seen a single company that seems to be that dominant player that's going to rule over the world because it has the most powerful AI that nobody else can kind of catch us. We have seen quite a number of different players have models and AI that are at almost similar levels of capabilities and progress. And I think that will sort of continue to sort of happen. So at least today, I think I'm not too worried about the ethics of these for-profit companies. At least they seem to be, I think we're in the sort of early days of this whole build out where companies are making these AI models available for free. They're not even charging consumers to use some of these things. ChatGPT's subscription is pretty cheap relative to the amount of value that you get.
Yep.
So I think it's still in a good place for consumers. But if we get to a point where these companies start to charge very pricey fees for you to access this AI, or they limit it to only very select group of people, I think that's the time that I would start to get very worried.
So SpaceX plans to go public at a $1.5 trillion valuation in 2026. The Google CEO is talking about building data centers in space. You made a really good point with regards to the way that the structures of these VC Silicon Valley-led rounds create this need to kind of build out efficient technologies, create innovation, create efficient markets. In addition to that, investors are looking for returns. Founders are looking for exits. As long as we keep a baseline of democratized access, I do agree that I think that we're still in a good spot as far as kind of outlook goes. But talk to us about this data center hype, like this data center rush. It's like a space race happening right now. Chamath Palihapitiya just announced he was building one out in Nevada, I think, like about a year ago or so, or 6 months ago. We're talking about building space centers or data centers in space. Is this a bubble? Teng, is this a big freaking bubble? Are we in way over our heads right now?
Yeah. So, I think everyone kind of has the eye on the big prize out there, right? Which is some form of like super intelligence. And the way that everyone believes that we're going to get to this super intelligence is by throwing more and more compute at it. So, and that's why the data centers are getting bigger. This is probably the biggest experiment that humanity is sort of like conducting today, because we don't know when this sort of like scaling law will stop, right? Is there a point where we've hit a certain limit, and even if you build a better and bigger data centers and you throw more chips, you throw more compute at the AI, we are not going to improve it any more significantly?
Right.
Will we hit that sort of like point in time? We don't know. We only will know once we actually get there and we see it. And if we actually see something like that, where we are actually not able to scale the levels of improvements of AI alongside scaling the data and compute, then I think there's a good risk that the bubble might sort of like burst at that point in time, because people realize that actually we won't be able to, all the additional spending on data centers may not work. But until that point in time, everyone just has to play the game. It's like musical chairs, right? You just have to keep walking, you have to keep building, you have to keep racing to build the biggest data center and accumulate as many chips as you can, so that you have a seat in this game and you're not sort of like out of it, especially if you're one of these like big tech companies that want to maintain its sort of like market share and dominance in this world.
Yeah, man, that is an interesting picture that you paint here, Teng. You mentioned some about some of these open source kind of decentralized inference networks that you like BitTensor. I'm curious, like, what signals are you looking for that indicate real traction in this market, right? Like, is it cost efficiency, model diversity, specialization techniques? Like, when you're looking at this whole kind of blockchain AI sector, what are you looking at right now? Where are you seeing actual traction, and where should our investors in our community actually look to do more research into, and what should we avoid?
Yeah, so I think the way I would evaluate like companies who are building in the intersection between like crypto, blockchain, and AI is pretty much similar to like how you evaluate a startup, like a tech startup. You look at users. You look at, is there any sort of like product market fit? Are people using the product? Or if you're building like infrastructure or protocol, are people building very cool applications on that particular protocol? Overall, I would say that we are still in the pretty early phase, I would say, of crypto and AI. A lot of teams have been focused on building infrastructure, whether you're building an infrastructure for agentic payments, you're building infrastructure to support decentralized like compute or decentralized training of AI models. And once that infrastructure is in place and some of these teams are starting to get these like protocols launched and on mainnet, we're going to hopefully we'll see people start to build on this. So I'm looking for that. I'm looking for developer activity. I'm looking for users on the platform. I'm looking for some of these companies to be able to build a sort of a sustainable business model and actually be able to generate revenue. Because AI is not cheap. Like if you are running inference, it costs quite a bit of money to run an application that uses or provides the user with a lot of queries. I think BitTensor is interesting.
Makes sense.
Yeah, BitTensor is interesting because to me, I kind of see it almost like an incubator or an accelerator. So like by buying into BitTensor, you are sort of like buying into, say, 60 to 100 different AI startups that are trying to do all different kinds of things. Most of these subnets and startups will probably not make it. They'll probably fail at some point in time. But hopefully there'll be a few of these that will actually get to sort of like very sizable like revenue and business models. And we're actually starting to see like some of these subnets on BitTensor, like shoots are actually like, producing quite a good amount of like revenue, which is subsidized by the Tau token, of course. So yeah, I think that economic sustainability still needs to sort of like be thought about.
Yeah. Yeah. Such is the way with all I would say 99% of these crypto networks, the economics sustainability still needs to be continuously improved on and iterated on. Teng Yan, appreciate your time, man. Absolutely epic AI Supercycle episode today. Thanks for your time. Thank you for coming in, answering some hot questions, and having some fun, man. Would love to have you on in 2026 as we continuously explore the proliferation of this technology and the acceleration and improvement. So thanks for your time, man.
Yeah, no, thanks, Andy, for having me here. Like, this was fun, and yeah, looking forward to chat more. 2026 is going to be a great year, I'm sure, for AI.
And Teng, where can our audience find you? Chain of thought. How can we support you?
Yeah, I write a weekly newsletter. You can find it at chainofthought.xyz, and I'm pretty active on X and Twitter as well. So you can find me at Teng Yan AI, I believe.
Awesome. Teng Yan, thank you, man.